What's he been doing?
Absolutely nothing.
Where are the
Nuts.
stones? Somewhere under all this. All I know is he doesn't have them. So we keep it that way.
You know it's a trap, right?
Yeah, I don't much care.
Good. Just as long as we're all in agreement. Let's kill him properly this time.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me. Now, I know what I must do. I will shred this universe down to its last atom. And then, with the stones you've collected for me, create a new one, teeming with life, that knows not what it is lost, but only what it has been given. A grateful universe.
Born out of blood.
They'll never know it. Because you won't be alive to tell them.
Hello, viewers! Sorry for the long wait between episodes, I was moving. Welcome back to another episode of EcoSwap's Can They Survive? The series where we isekai a breeding population of organisms to another time or place and evaluate how they react and adapt to this new ecosystem. Today will be our second ever plant episode. First, if you're too young to watch the cannabis and the carboniferous, since YouTube is run by a bunch of squares! Can black walnut trees survive in the middle Devonian? A common tree across North America, grown for wood and ornamental purposes, placed when land plants and fish are truly taking over the world. Surely this additional plant will do nothing but good things for the greening of the earth, right?
Dude, it's right above us, bro. Dude, I know. I'm scared. No, look at all that. Look at that ring! Oh my god, I'm just gonna get nailed. Look at this, yo, look at this. Look at that! Look at the tree! The tree! Look at the tree! Look at the tree! Dude, oh my god! Oh my god, oh my god!
Juglans nigra, and yes, I will only be pronouncing it nigra as I don't have enough melanin to say it any other way, is a common tree across central and eastern North America. They are deciduous, or shed leaves in the fall, or dry season, and monoecious, when male and female flowers are present on the same plant, though not on the same flower. They also showcase a process called dichogamy, where the male and female flowers bloom at different times in order to prevent too much self-fertilization. Female flowers bloom first, then the males later. Part of the order Phagales, which I can say however I want, black walnuts are related to things like beeches, chestnuts, pecans, oaks, and alders. Black walnuts tend to grow over 30 meters tall, or about 100 feet. And for a tree, they reach this size very quickly, reaching fruiting maturity as soon as 10 to 15 years. This isn't the same as mature size, just the size they produce fruit at. They cannot tolerate large amounts of shade, so they need to find open spaces where they can receive
And the full concentrated power of the sun!
to grow healthy. In areas with more shade, the adult trees are more likely to produce sprouts from the base, a kind of backup in case something happens to the main trunk. This walnut's ideal habitat are riparian zones, the spaces between rivers and land. These habitats are something of a transitional space between terrestrial and aquatic biomes. Juglans nigra likes moist soils, but it's not too picky. They can grow in soil that is sandy, loamy, or clay-based substrates, and range from mildly acidic to mildly alkaline or basic. Black walnuts can grow anywhere from Growth Zone 4 to Growth Zone 9. What's a growth zone? These are guides for plant growth, primarily used by gardeners or agriculturalists. They are defined by their lowest average temperature. This map here can put it into better clarity. Zone 4 has an average cold temperature of negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 34 degrees Celsius. Zone 9 rarely ever gets colder than an average of 30 degrees Fahrenheit, or negative 4 degrees Celsius. The hottest temperatures that black walnuts can tolerate are about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, or 37 degrees Celsius. This is the range that Juglans nigra likes. Any hotter or colder, and the nuts would lose their ability to germinate.
That's what she said.
Surprisingly, they have a taproot system, a thick, tapered cone that goes deep into the ground. This is ideal for survival in drought conditions, though makes the tree a bit more vulnerable if the root is damaged, as opposed to fibrous roots, which spread out wider but don't go as deep. Seeds, or nuts, drop in the fall, or early dry season, and flowers in the spring, or early wet seasons. Adult plants can self-fertilize, but normally reproduce with their neighbors with wind pollination. In the modern day, nuts are frequently transported by squirrels and other small mammals. But you all must be thinking, why the black walnut? What makes it special? That would be its allelopathic chemicals. Some plants practice a form of chemical warfare, injecting toxins into the soil to prevent other plants from growing. During the decaying process, black walnut shells excrete hydrojugulone. This is non-toxic and only becomes the more dangerous jugulone once it starts to oxidize. This inhibits germination and respiration in plants, and when it contaminates water, is a respiratory inhibitor to fish, amphibians, and their eggs. Historically, it has been accepted that black walnuts evolved this chemical response to prevent other plants from growing in the area. And truthfully, certain plant groups like apples, pines, birches, cabbages,
Oh, my cabbages!
blueberries, alfalfa, potatoes, eggplants, magnolias, and linden trees are all negatively affected by jugulones in the soil. Now, recent studies have called into question the validity of black walnut toxins. With its initial results being over 2 decades out of date, and other plant species being observed to be unaffected or even benefit from growing in the presence of jugulones, it would seem that this allelopathy is somewhat species-specific, targeting their direct competitors. However, jugulone— I swear to God, if there's a picture of Jughead Jones on the screen right now, it better not be the Riverdale one. Jugulones can remain in the soil for decades, especially if it's poorly aerated, meaning most plants that aren't black walnuts struggle to get started there. And if there's already walnuts on the ground, this creates a positive feedback loop of the trees dropping more nuts, and the nuts that decay altering the soil, and the nuts that germinate in this soil growing into new trees to drop more nuts, and so on. Jugulone is very poorly insoluble in water, meaning it doesn't break down easily and sticks around for a while. In places where trees are heavily processed near bodies of water, these can kill off most species of fish. Like all plants, black walnuts are reliant on nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in the soil. Without these and an assortment of other nutrients, plants can't grow. A wide variety of parasites can target black walnuts. Fungi like the European canker and Geosmitha morbida cause fatal infections by growing cankers, tiny patches of dead tissue that grow slowly over time. Eventually, they cut off portions of the plant from the nutrients coming up from the roots, killing it, and will eventually spread to kill the whole tree. Insects like the maggots of fruit flies, walnut weevils, walnut caterpillars, codling moths, the walnut lacebug, the walnut twig beetle, luna moths, aphids, and plant lice are all issues that can either stunt a plant's growth or kill them outright. They either consume the plant directly, or lay eggs inside the plant that hatch and devour it from the inside out. And the biggest killer for juglans is shade. Young saplings simply can't grow if anything, be it cliffs, steep rock faces, or taller plants, are blocking it from the sun. In places of the world where there is very little sunlight, you won't see these plants at all.
Let it die, let it shrivel up and come on!
Finally, many modern plants have evolved resistances to the effects of jugulones. Some pines, ferns, asters, ginger, geraniums, iris, and junipers, just to name a few. So, how will the black walnut do in a time when land plants are exploding in diversity and fish rule the world? Wait a second.
Oh, nuts! There goes my sister's
skull gets us screwed up again. Tried to drive her home from that cool party with my friends, but I tried to get a nut, not that kind of nut, cause she ate a walnut.
The Panther Mountain Formation, located in New York City, and dated to about 393 to 358 million years ago, is a part of the Hamilton Group.
I am not throwing away my shot.
Also part of this group are the Moscow, Manhattango, Marcellus, Catskill, and Ludlowville formations that will be used to help flesh out the overall ecosystem. Keep in mind, not every organism is going to live at the exact same time and place, but showcasing all of them shows a better picture of the area over time. We'll also be looking at a few other fossil formations from around the same time across the globe. I'll get more into why later. This environment was a coastal one, with shallow seas meeting both sandy beaches and river deltas. The Catskill Delta, which existed near the time of our setting, was similar in size, shape, and deposition to the Niger Delta in modern Africa. Just beyond this were very deep ocean waters. Given our trees can't grow in seawater, in fact most trees can't, we'll focus on the terrestrial part of this fossil bed. But the deep waters off the coast give us some major information. This area was frequently bombarded by tropical storms like hurricanes. There was also a decently large mountain range in the area called the Acadian Mountains. Yes, those Acadian Mountains, part of Appalachia, they're that old. At this time in history, New York was relatively near the equator, just a little south of it. This further supports its tropical comparisons. God, imagine if modern-day New York had the climate of Daytona Beach. The tourism industry would give us at least 5 reality show spin-offs, at least. Data on exact temperatures are hard to come by. On average, it was about 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. This is true of both the early and late Devonian periods, with the middle getting colder due to the rise of land plants drawing carbon out of the atmosphere and putting it into the sediment. At the very end of the Devonian, the world got very cold, experiencing its first major ice age. But for the moment, we're not going to worry about that. Lastly, the landscape was undergoing drastic change due to the evolution of vascular land plants. While the finer details are still being debated, this is a remarkably long time in the past, the presence of these plants were breaking up and weathering stone, enhancing silicate weathering cycles, storing carbon, and increasing nutrient runoff into waterways. Remember that last one, it's a surprise tool that will kill so much life later. Long story short, the habitat is well within black walnut's preferred temperatures, soil content, and habitat range. Speaking of soil, what does this plant need to feed on?
Nightmare about a nut head? Since a few days ago, I keep having this nightmare about seeing a nut head everywhere.
What?
It's just a man dressed in casual clothes with a giant nut as a head. I can't explain what nut it is in shape, but I would say a walnut. In the dream, I would see him...
Like all plants, the biggest key nutrients black walnuts need are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Some of the most vital micronutrients include hydrogen, calcium, sulfur, and magnesium. Can the Devonian period provide these? Well, the Devonian period sports the first known organic soil in our planet's history, called a histole, likely formed by microbes and the few inch-tall early land plants in the beginning of the time period. By the late Devonian, plants with roots over a meter deep had evolved, showing how deep the soil was now running. A paper written by Gregory J. Retalak from the University of Oregon delves into the details of some soil content from the Middle Devonian. He specifies how the clay soils in Antarctica were particularly rich in nutrients, even before the evolution of tall trees. Well drained, enriched in nutrients, particularly calcium, they showed a perfect bed of resources for plant life in general. Black walnuts of today prefer to grow in limestone soils to boot, which are also heavy in calcium, suggesting that this environment would be fairly ideal for them. As the Devonian chugged along, a positive feedback loop made the soil more and more nutrient-rich over time. Older plants died and would eventually be buried, adding nutrients to the soil, which in turn prompted more animals and plants feeding and dying, adding back more to the soil, and so on. As further evidence to the soil quality, the first fossils of nematodes pop up in the early Devonian. For those of you only familiar with their appearance on SpongeBob, these free-living or parasitic invertebrates are present in every habitat and organism on Earth today, feeding on microorganisms. They outnumber every other clade of animal on Earth, and they are a strong sign of a healthy microbiome. Also present are the earliest springtails. Very early, wingless insects that eat decaying matter in the soil. Cute little fellows, and like the nematodes themselves, they're still around to this day. While fossils of Rhinelia are disputed to whether or not they were springtails or myriapods, which today include centipedes and millipedes, this was an extra detritivore that helped to recycle nutrients. Silverfish, which, fun fact, my wife thought were entirely fictional and only existed in Minecraft for 10 years, may also be present in the Devonian. This is another detritivore that would help the soil content, though the validity of this clade being here is somewhat dubious. By the middle-late Devonian, where we'll be dropping our collection of black walnut seeds, there's already ideal growing conditions. But it's not uninhabited. Other life forms were already here taking advantage of this tasty soil.
Dawn. And all the females in the area have mated and moved on.
Black walnuts like to be the dominant plant in a forest habitat. Can they accomplish this here? What might already be covering the ground when the nuts drop?
Okay,
Let's start with the problem child, Prototaxites. Long thought to be a fungi, this is now an indeterminate eukaryote. What does that mean? Well, it's alive. Taxonomically difficult to classify, these 25 to 30 feet, or 8 to 9 meters tall, somethings were present during the entire Devonian. They weren't photosynthetic, we know that thanks to their isotopes, and they had to consume other organisms in one form or another. Their incredible height for the time may have been for spore dispersal, or to grow algae or lichen on to sap energy from. We do know that they extended fungi-like mycelia, root-like branching structures, into the early branching plants, though it's unknown why they did this. Maybe it was leaching energy from the plants, maybe it was sharing energy, we simply don't know. Ultimately, by creating some scattered shade, we can assume they're something of a direct competitor to black walnuts, but the black walnuts can outgrow Prototaxites by several degrees, so the shade production isn't going to be a huge step in the wrong direction. And given Prototaxites had its mycelia in smaller, more vulnerable plants, and they survived just fine, this dynamic probably existed for most of the Devonian. I don't have any solid evidence that Prototaxites would be able to outcompete black walnuts, but this is also an organism shrouded in mystery, so take it with a grain of salt. There are a few scattered fossilized fungi here as well, from the families Chytridiomycetes and Ascomycota. The former are microscopic parasitic fungi, defined by having some of the first chitinous cell walls. Most target amphibians, though some parasitize algae and even potatoes. However, walnuts and potatoes aren't at all closely related, or really share a major ecological niche, and while chytrid fungi were fossilized in early rhinophyte plants, those are so distantly related they make humans and sponges look like brothers. Ascomycota are a better studied and represented group, but they range from parasites to symbiotes of almost any plant and are famous for being able to digest and break down almost anything. Some modern members of this fungi consume paint or jet fuel. Yes, some of these will absolutely be able to adapt to eat decaying black walnuts, but they're just as likely to be beneficial partners as parasites, so it's hard to say that they would genuinely reduce the amount black walnuts could reproduce in this area. More likely, it'll even out to somewhat neutral, with some members of Ascomycota hurting them and others helping them. Now let's go green. The Devonian period had a lot of plants, though most were quite small. In this minuscule category are three clades: Taniocrata, a taxonomically confusing plant, Zosterophils, and their sister clade, the Lycophytes, or modern-day club mosses. All very cute, being only a few centimeters or inches tall and growing in very wet environments. My personal favorite is Saudonia, a Zosterophil covered in spikes, likely to deter herbivorous arthropods or to increase surface area to maximize water consumption. Another day I'll go into detail on these groups, they're really cool, and obviously they offer no competition to a toxic tree whose sprouts can reach higher than these early vascular plants. What we consider ferns and horsetails wouldn't evolve until much later, but an early relative was ready to meet black walnuts by the time they arrived. Meet Watieza. While it superficially resembled modern tree ferns, this was a result of convergent evolution. It reproduced with spores like a fern instead of seeds. First appearing 385 million years ago in the Middle Devonian, These 8-meter, or 26-foot tall trees hold the title of the earliest known tree entirely, in all of history. In their home in New York, Belgium, and Venezuela, the soil was primarily comprised of limestones, sandstones, mudstones, and shales. Somewhat acidic soils that, oh hey, black walnuts love that! Watieza offers little competition, as juvenile walnuts will be able to quickly outgrow it. Combine that with the deeper roots and the Juglans that black walnuts put into the soil, and this tree will not likely be able to inhibit the nut's ascension. Calamophyton was a Dr. Seuss-looking ass tree that formed the understory of Devonian New York and Venezuela. With a fat bottom made of hundreds to thousands of roots, a palm-like trunk that was also hollow for some reason, and photosynthetic twigs instead of leaves, this was a truly weird tree. Standing at 0.8 to 4 meters tall, or 2.5 to 13 feet, it wasn't very tall, and its thin trunk and lack of leaves means even a black walnut growing underneath won't be denied sunlight. Tetraxylopterus was a pro-gymnosperm, a group that was ancestral to both modern-day gymnosperms and the angiosperms. Its branches folded with age, like a fern's, though it's not related at all. Photosynthesis occurred in proto-leaves, which may have been precursors to modern leaves, or perhaps weren't and just were convergent structures. We are very far in deep time here. Their exact height is unknown, but it's only suspected to be a few meters. With wide branches, it might actually create enough shade to hinder the growth of new walnut trees, but Juglans may force those branches to wilt. Last, but certainly not least, was Archaeopteryx. No, not the bird, Archaeopteryx. This is Archaeopteryx. See? It's spelled differently. It's not confusing at all. This tree was very similar to modern woody plants, despite not being closely related. Another pro-gymnosperm, their leaves were similar to fern fronds, but arranged like those of modern conifers. With trunks up to 1.5 meters, or 5 feet thick, and 24 meters, or 80 feet tall, these were some of the largest trees in the world at the time. It was one of the first plants to start evolving deeper roots, likely for structural support. Like its contemporary, Watieza, it used spores for reproduction. This was the dominant plant on the planet, in both size and range. They featured on every continent, including Antarctica, and is present on all terrestrial fossil formations from this time period. They formed the canopy of the landscape, and like the incoming walnut, preferred wet soil nearby rivers and floodplains. Root systems of Archaeopteryx seem to help support each other, which is the leading hypothesis of why this tree got so much taller than the competition. That, and an overall lack of competition. It's almost 50 feet taller on average than the next tallest tree. Archaeopteryx was probably used to getting the vast majority of the sunlight available too. Part of the reason this tree was so successful was the Taphonic extinction event a few million years prior. This anoxic ocean event disrupted food webs worldwide, and afterwards, Archaeopteryx exploded in its range. Can Archaeopteryx stop or at least slow down the growth of black walnuts? No. While their dense canopies will prevent them from growing in the forest, black walnuts have a much better drought tolerance than any other plant mentioned here due to their taproots. And once the walnuts reach adulthood in the outskirts of Archaeopteryx forests, they'll quickly take over. No, not just because of the Juglans, those are an inhibitor to other plant growth, but primarily due to height and rate of reproduction. With a solid 20 to 50 feet, or 6 to 15 meters taller, black walnuts will be able to start denying sunlight to the previous dominant tree. We don't know for sure how shade-tolerant Archaeopteryx is, but most plants that form the upper canopy aren't very tolerant of being denied sunlight. Given that it's towered over its contemporaries, we can reasonably assume that it isn't used to that. Black walnuts can also reproduce and spread much faster. Wind-based pollen can be transported miles away. The spore-reproducing Archaeopteryx can only send those spores a few meters away. To reproduce, the sperm of this plant have to actively swim across water to reach each other, like in modern-day ferns and mosses. This requires a wet environment where they're relatively close and bundled together. Archaeopteryx' only major advantage when competing for growing space and sunlight is a higher tolerance of being in water. While it takes at least a few generations, the Devonian forests quickly shift from being primarily Archaeopteryx to being primarily black walnuts. So, as our final verdict, Juglans nigra thrives in the Devonian. Growing conditions are perfect, the habitat and soil are all phenomenal, and the local flora offers little to no competition. The local fungi could pose an issue, but they aren't specialized to target plants, and some are even symbiotes for plants. It's impossible to say for sure, as microbiomes and diseases are genuinely impossible to target in these types of videos. There could very well be some unknown Devonian virus that wipes out the black walnuts right away. But based on the knowledge we have, it's unlikely these parasites will be able to damage them because parasites tend to be specialized to a specific host or a group of hosts. At best, it would take time for these native fungi to adapt to attacking the black walnut, and time where it could evolve defenses as well. As for parasitic insects, none of the modern clades of insects that damage J. nigra exist, with only the earliest ancestors of the clade present. Like the fungi, it would take them time to adapt, and by that point, the walnuts will have spread over most of the planet.
No, something isn't right. This isn't supposed to happen this way.
But that's not the only effect. If you recall, the jugulones and tannins secreted by black walnuts aren't water-soluble and are highly toxic to fish and amphibians. The Devonian is known as the Age of Fish, but more importantly, it was when the first tetrapods, or four-limbed vertebrates, climbed out of water for the first time. Animals like Tiktaalik and Hynerpteron were some of the first amphibians, taking their tentative steps onto land. The tannins from black walnuts leach into their skin and kill their eggs. Most freshwater fish perish immediately, either from poison, suffocation, or none of their fry manage to survive year after year. The seas don't fare much better, with rivers carrying most of these toxins to the ocean. But EcoSwap, you might say, modern-day fish don't die off en masse near black walnuts. Yes, that is correct, because those lineages evolved alongside each other. As black walnuts developed these allelopathic chemicals, fish living nearby had selective pressure exerted on them. While the jugulones would kill those that were more vulnerable, some fish, those who were born with a lucky mutation to make them slightly more resistant, would be more likely to pass off their offspring. The early fish of the Devonian don't have this built-in defense going for them. In our timeline, without black walnuts being present, the Devonian extinction event was the second of 5 known mass extinctions in Earth's history. While it occurred over 20 million years and many factors contributed, the two most prominent stemmed from the massive growth of land plants. Breaking down soils to release minerals and elements into waterways, causing algae blooms that sapped oxygen from the waters, these vast forests inhaled huge quantities of CO2, a greenhouse gas, which resulted in severe temperature drops and caused a late Paleozoic ice age. Combine this with volcanism, potential meteor impacts, and a supernova that may have happened around this time, and 40% of life in the oceans died out, with somewhere between 50 to 75% on life in total being culled. In particular, fish, especially the bony fish called osteichthyes, the group that would eventually give rise to all modern tetrapods, lost 96% of their biodiversity. All of that happened without black walnuts being present. Oh boy, this is the first time on Can They Survive where an introduced organism causes or furthers a mass extinction event. In this new timeline, 85% of marine species go extinct. Amniotes, trilobites, and eurypterids all die off millions of years before they would in our timeline. Crustaceans and bivalves lose upwards of 80% of species, with some lineages like the stomatopods being wiped out entirely. Ostracoderms and placodonts, more commonly known as the jawless fish and the armored fish like Dunkleosteus, all die off, but bring far more with them. The osteichthyes die off entirely. Most notably, all the developing tetrapods die off. Even those capable of escaping the worst of these poisoned waterways still see their eggs killed soon after laying, ending lineages that would lead to the amniotes. Reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals, all wiped out by this single nut.
I don't feel so good.
Life on land fares slightly better. While many land plants die off, Juglans aren't as toxic to them, and some lineages, like ferns and progymnosperms in the present, are highly resistant, so it's very possible these lineages could evolve that resistance as well. Prototaxides were wiped out long before they were in our world. The lycopods hung on, though they lost half their species in the process. Terrestrial invertebrates are the least affected. Being able to lay eggs entirely out of water helped protect their young, and these fast-to-reproduce animals recovered quickly. Myriapods and arachnids flourished, adapting to many new niches and habitats unavailable to them before. And in this new world, the walnut reigns supreme.
I have to make things right.
This is your time to pay. This is your judgment day. We made a sacrifice and now we get to take your life. We shoot without a gun. We'll take on anyone. It's really nothing new. It's just a thing we like to do. Good day, many times.
Juguphora mangela, the mangret. Along the coast of Devonian Earth, interspersed by ferns and early lycopods, are a windbreaker wall of bark and wood. They stretch inland for miles, only broken up after the seawater is long gone and other black walnuts more adapted to freshwater take over in dominance. These are the mangrets, Juguphora mangela. Like today's mangroves, they are heavily salt-tolerant. Highly impermeable roots, and storing excess salt in leaves that are about to be shed in order to stave off the worst of this mineral. They are much shorter than their ancestors, but wider, with more outspread roots that tangle together. Standing only 10 meters, or 33 feet tall at their tallest, the tougher growing conditions have forced them down. Furthermore, they store salt in their fruits. As there are no animals that specifically consume these fruits in the environment, any adaptations to sweetness to lure those in would be lost after a few generations. Better to use these packets to ditch excess salt. These nuts are a whitish gray, a consequence of this salt storage. That being said, these trees have become incredibly influential to the world's ecosystems. Acting as a living wall, forests of mangrets mitigate the force of tropical storms. Winds and waves break upon hitting the tree wall, and while some trees are destroyed in the process, the forests are the ultimate winners. Storms lose the majority of their energy on the coast, lessening damage to forests of the interior. The winding roots of mangrets provide a habitat for hundreds of species that survive the initial tannin die-off. They still leak some tannins into the seawater they grow in, yes, but it's far reduced compared to their ancestors, and nearly all the remaining organisms at this point have some kind of resistance to the toxins. After all, the only ones that survived the extinction event were those slightly more resilient to begin with, and this trait only got stronger over time. In all these ways, Juguphora mangela is a keystone species, one that provides the very backbone for its habitat and those species around it. The black coconut, Juglans cocos. Just behind the mangrets are taller trees, around 20 meters, with skinnier trunks and higher leaves. More salt-tolerant than average, but nowhere near compared to the mangrets, these plants can't grow in the salt water, but a few meters deep inland is all they need. A deep taproot lets them reach pockets of fresh water even close to the sea, in part thanks to sand helping to filter out most of it. Their leaves are broad, converging on those of palms, and most only erupt from the tree's crown, leaving a long, barren trunk. But what sets them apart are their seeds. Instead of producing dozens to hundreds of walnuts, black coconuts only produce 2 to 6 at a time, and these few nuts are huge.
That's what she said.
In biology, there are 2 forms of reproduction, K selection and R selection. Most plants utilize R selection, which is producing many offspring at a time and offering little to no care or energy investment. K selection is having a small number of offspring, but spending a lot of time, energy, and effort into making sure those young have the best head start they can. In our timeline, coconut trees, surprisingly, use the latter. While trees can't protect or defend their young like animals do, they can spend years growing the giant hairy nuts.
Because
in preparation for when they grow on their own. Like the coconut namesake, Juglans cocos spends years growing the engorged seeds, lining the insides with nutrients so that when they are dropped and begin to grow, the saplings have years of energy stored at their disposal. The shells are thick and hard, but more for environmental protection. Nothing on land has yet evolved physical adaptations to cracking them open. To make matters even better for the seed and worse for everything else, the black coconut trees pump excessive jugulones into the soil before the nuts drop. Black coconuts are floaters, easily sitting on the surface of the water. They can drift on currents for hundreds of miles, carrying their toxic payload of jugulones for when they finally sprout. Sometimes they even leak it into the sea, which has only helped to bring the tannin extinction event into the last remaining habitats untouched, the deep ocean. Millions of years after freshwater and coastal habitats recovered, the deep seas and open waters now feel the full wrath of the walnut. With these habitats suffering from mass die-offs, a cascading effect reaches back to land. Loss of phytoplankton and zooplankton create dead zones in the sea, pockets where the black coconuts are carried by currents in mass numbers. As the tannins leak to the very bottom of the oceans, they acidify the waters, breaking down the calcium shells of invertebrates and causing harmful algae blooms. Once again, life in the Devonian is dealt a harsh blow, and so soon after the last one. But the Juglans cocos have no malice in its destruction. It is not cruel, just indifferent. Another organism looking to survive and pass on its genes, just by protecting their young. Crassulan aquaphobia, the succu-nut. As we move farther inland, we take a closer look at the terrain which hasn't experienced much loss at all. Out in the drier deserts, there wasn't nearly as much life compared to rivers and lakes, early plants, tetrapods, and invertebrates were looking for. An environment the black walnuts were suitably prepared for. With deep taproots and more efficient stomata, small cells in the leaves, to hold in water during the heat of the day, one descendant of the walnuts has become a desert specialist. Crassulan aquaphobia is the most derived of these. To a human eye, they may be labeled as a succulent, a non-taxonomic group of plants famous for thick leaves, short trunks, and the ability to retain water in dry habitats. Indeed, these walnuts have converged on many of the same features. Their leaves are short and thick, fleshy to the touch, and packed with liquids. While adult trees of this plant barely reach over 4 meters tall, their taproots more than make up for this. Typical C. aquaphobia have taproots measuring 20 to 30 meters deep, or 60 to 90 feet. One exceptional individual had a record-shattering root depth of 150 meters, 492 feet deep. All of this intense growth is to find and hold on to a source of water. And like their ancestors, these plants are far better equipped to do this than any of the Devonian natives. Their flowers are densely packed and aggregated, but rarely seen. The plants respond well to rain when it blesses their leaves, and flowers can bloom overnight with staggering abundance. This kind of speed is vital when you don't know when the next storm will be. When the rains do come, these plants synchronize their flowers opening and release pollen for hundreds of miles, searching for new mates in a short time span. Many ride the very storm winds that trigger their release, reaching new populations hundreds of miles away. These plants can live for centuries, with the oldest individuals reaching over a millennia. But most don't make it that far. Parasites are their worst enemies. The ancestors of today's mites, tiny arachnids known for parasitizing both animals and plants, are the major limiter keeping Crassulan aquaphobia from coating the desert. Smaller than a grain of rice, these ancestral mites dig a proboscis twice their body length into the leaves and bark, sucking out the precious water the giant taproots dredge up. This plant produces heavy amounts of jugulones to try and kill the mites, but this arms race started long ago. Toxins wiped out all but the most resilient arachnids, and now those that parasitize C. aquaphobia are nearly immune. In greener pastures, these hyper-specialized mites have much more competition and predation. Only out in the desert can they swarm. Some succulents can have over 1 billion of the parasitic nightmares latched onto them, being drained from every direction at once. With temperatures dropping and the deserts getting more isolated, this arms race has no end in sight. Myriamanta aquapteris. An ocean devoid of fish. It feels contradictory, but it is a reality here. Now, most of the sea's bounty are squids. Pelagic cephalopods are the new sardines, swimming in huge schools and making up the lower rungs of the food web after plankton. Parting them like a biblical sea is an undulating monster. At nearly 2 meters long, its chitinous frame slips through the school of squid, huge gnashing mandibles jutting forward. But this animal isn't feeding on the squid. No, instead it competes with them for the same planktonic calories drifting in the open ocean. This is Myriamanta aquapteris, a marine myriapod. It shares a common ancestor with modern-day millipedes and centipedes, though has diverged even before those two groups split from one another. With proper gills under its head, breathing the water is no issue. Neither is swimming by undulating their bodies in a vertical wave, more akin to a marine mammal than a fish. Speaking of fish, these aquatic myriapods have taken one of their notable niches from them. With giant filter feeders like titanoichthyes going extinct, other organisms took the call. Myriamanta is a monotypic genus. They have no other close relatives other than their own lineage. The myriapods entered the water late, and many crustaceans have already adapted to replace fish of various sizes. But like the modern-day centipedes Scolopendra cataracta, their ancestor fled into water to escape predators, hydrophobic chitin allowing them quick getaways. Over time, these animals became more and more aquatic, until this highly specialized marine filter feeder is one of the strangest animals in early Carboniferous seas. Reproduction was the hardest evolutionary problem for their ancestors to solve. Laying a clutch of eggs in seawater is very different from on land. Like their ancestors, males offer females a spermatophore, a package of semen. But unlike their ancestors, who left it out in the open for a female to find at her leisure, Myriamanta gather in schools of hundreds to mate once every 2 years. The spermatophores would break down if left in the seawater too long, so females take them directly from males they fancy. Once a mate is chosen and accepted, they part ways. The female's eggs and young will gestate inside her body for 6 months, until 3 to 6 are born as about a 1/3 meter long individuals, fully capable of swimming on their own. Many are born nearby the mangrove swamps for their protection. Adults have asymmetrical mandibles, an unusual trait for marine fauna, which normally rely heavily on hydrodynamics. Myriamanta tend to be either left or right mandibled, relying more on the larger one. While males use the size of their dominant mandible to impress females, the ladies also have this trait. It may just be an example of a trait not having any notable drawbacks, and is retained as there is little to no pressure against it. While small, these marine myriapods have become common in tropical waters around the globe, and their success was entirely dependent on the downfall of fish. Similar to our next animal, Creorachnis devoni. Deep in the walnut forest lies a small swarm of herbivorous mites. Unlike their desert cousins, these aren't so thick that they kill the trees they feed on. This horde, only about 100, could fit on a dinner plate, but their swollen abdomens show the thick processed tree sap within. A much larger arachnid approaches. She walks over to them, inspecting each mite with large eyes, gently brushing them with her frontmost legs. One particular mite has its head pressed into the back by her claws, and sap leaks out of its rear. Her own sharp chelicerae gently accept the liquid, slurping it into her maw. She is a member of the species Creorachnis devoni, a kind of trigonotarbid arachnid, a sister clade to modern tick spiders. For her kind, she is large, with a leg span of almost 3 inches. Most animals of the trigonotarbids are a third of her size. Anatomically, she's not too different from others of her clade. Larger eyes and prosoma, the portion of an arthropod that makes up their head, are the main distinctions, as is her much more colorful build. We'll refer to this particular individual as Oilia. After taking stock of her duties, she positions herself above the mites on the trunk, looking downward. While her eyes can see all around her, binocular vision in the front is best for assessing threats. Like ants of our time, C. devoni farms the sap-sucking mites for sweet byproduct they produce. It's easy, reliable food, but given how delicious they taste, plenty of other arachnids and myriapods enjoy it as well. Right now, It's Ophelia's turn to watch. They lack the eusociality of modern ants, but like wolf or jumping spiders, they tolerate members of their own kind living in groups, particularly of related individuals. Up to 15 females and various wandering males can be found in tandem, looking after their mites and offering additional eyes to search for threats. Ophelia detects movement down the trunk. She adjusts her position, angling towards its direction. When she recognizes the form slowly climbing towards her, she tenses. Arachnids don't produce adrenaline, but her memory and instinct react upon seeing the threat. Ophelia is now on high alert. The animal approaching her is easily 3 times her mass, with a leg span almost 10 inches across. It's another kind of trigonotarbid, but larger. Its eyes aren't as developed, but they've spotted her amongst the bark all the same. It's a therophobartid, a predatory arachnid. Even worse, it's not here for the mites. It's Ophelia that is the prey. As it climbs slowly up the trunk, Ophelia does not move. Part of it is a form of anxiety and fear, remaining still in the hope she may not be seen. But part is also memory. She's seen therophobartids kill her kind before. They are stronger, faster. Running is not an option. With one of her front legs, she slowly, cautiously, reaches toward her back. Tucked against her thorax, held by one of her rear legs, is a twig. A very sharp twig. She's seen this maneuver done once before. The Creorachnis who did it, an aunt of hers, died to her injuries later. But it was better odds than running. When less than a meter separates the two arachnids, the predator bolts forward. It has to cling tightly to the trunk given its larger mass, but even then, it's far faster in a sprint than Ophelia could ever run. As its fangs reach for her, she pulls the twig forward. The therophobartid impales itself on the makeshift spear, flinging its legs and scattering irritating hairs in response to the pain. The shift in momentum knocks loose the larger arachnid's balance, and with the spear still embedded in its mouth, it falls to the forest floor. It does not get back up. Ophelia's heart gradually slows down. She takes stock. One of her front limbs was removed in the tussle, pulled off by the heavy weight of her would-be predator. But the injury doesn't leak. She will recover. The noises of combat drew her attention, and 2 males of her kind came to relieve her of her watch. Using a series of complex moves with her pedipalps and front legs, wiggling her remaining arms in tandem with the colors of her body, she passes along information about what occurred, details about the predator, what angle it attacked from, how she defended herself. When finished, she descends from the tree, reaching the corpse of the therophobartid, now curled in a death pose. She drains its body of as much liquid as she can. With a few tense tugs, she manages to retrieve her spear from the larger arachnid's mouth. Her kind only recently started using sticks as tools. At first, it was just a convenient way to make the mites move where they wanted them. As a herding stick became standard, some individuals experimented with a wide variety of shapes found in nature on woody appendages. The previous generation, Ophelia's parents and similar clutches, were the first to rub the twigs on stones to sharpen them. She doesn't know it, but Ophelia is the first of her kind to kill above her weight class, and live to tell the tale. It was partially luck, partially an observed imitation of another of her kind, but this experience will be heavily referred in future encounters. Despite the discomfort from the lost limb, she doesn't return to the hollow higher up in the tree where her nestmates rest. She's developed a habit of returning to another location in times of high stress. It was an overhang that saved her from a particularly bad rainstorm. But her returning to that spot a dozen meters away isn't entirely nostalgia. Part of it is to entertain her growing brain. As she enters, her eyes immediately travel to the obstruction on the limestone wall, the one she spent several hours contemplating that one day in a rainstorm. She runs her claws along the change in texture, as the rougher stone gives way to a smoother one. The shape is still foreign and alien to her, but it fascinates her mind and holds her attention. A mind that is just beginning to process that more exists beyond the now. She takes in the shape of the teeth, each bigger than her legs. The eye sockets, which she can sit in comfortably. the pattern of scales across the hide of a long, dead monster. Oilia does not know what the fossilized remains of a Tiktaalik represent, but she does remember it. Every time her short 5-year life reaches a stressful point, she's reminded of that rainstorm. Many times, she returns to observe the change in stone. It reminds her no matter how bad things are, they could be far worse. After all, this world used to be lived in by monsters so large she can barely comprehend them. Thank you one and all for watching this today. I had a lot of fun with this one. Plant episodes are harder to research, but I learn a lot more from them too. Hopefully you all did as well. Plants deserve to be more than just a background in ecology. My goal is that now you'll all recognize a black walnut if you see one out in the wild. Once again, I want to thank my amazing art team for all their hard work. Shaded Janet, Barzap, JustSomeGuy, Nuka-Cola, Bald Bird, Johnny the City Patty, Drakeboy, and Greenclaw. We also have 3 new members of the art team joining us today. A Cantor Evolved, an Antithornine Bandwagon, and Corex. Please give them all a very warm welcome to the team. Here's a list of additional artwork I showed in today's episode. And finally, this is my very, very, very long list of sources I had to look up. This one was a doozy for research. See y'all!